Good evening. This is Public Access Poetry coming to you live from East 23rd Street, Middle Manhattan. Tonight, we're very pleased to have two fantastic poets as our guests, John Yao and Jeff Wright. John Yao is going to begin. John is the author of a book called The Reading of an Ever-Changing Tale and a soon-to-be-released Recent Survey, 2 books of poetry. He's the National Endowment for the Arts Award winner for 1976 to 77. And here's John Yao.
I'll read one poem and then let Jeff read. And this is called Cinch. Along the broken curves bisecting the streets into rectangles, new flowers like systems emerged and yielded no clues to their construction. One by one the windows turned their graceful backs to the city. At the headquarters various assaults are planned and forgotten like a glove. Certain events have a way of prevailing, however. Inside, you and I dream of a room large enough in which to dream.
Okay, I'll read a poem now called the Daughter of Mystery. Last night at the Cedar Tavern, I met the Daughter of Mystery. 1,000 chairs were stacked up there in her eyes, and I wanted to sit on all of them. We stayed till the place closed, she with a black Russian, me, and some beer. When her reptile bit my nescience, I asked her to shoot the moon. She said she lived with Chance and had to go home now to him. And that was how we left it, up to Chance, the full moon glowering like a bullseye.
Okay, this is a poem in a magazine called Roof. Got that, folks?
You should say who edits it.
Oh, by James Sherry.
No,
Tom
Yeah.
Savage.
edited by James Sherry and Tom
Savage.
Savage.
I don't look at these things. Anyway, sometimes it seems that what brings us together keeps us apart. Yesterday the sun was anchored to the flowers, and they begin in darknesses that can only be described in proportion to something else. The clock sounds like an axe hiccuping in the forest. Yours.
I never
Nick.
gave Jeff Wright an introduction. Here's
That's
his
right.
introduction. Jeff Wright, known to his friends as J.C. Wright, known to his enemies as, well,
As well, right?
we won't go
Judas
into
Wright.
that, is producing a series of postcards, and hopefully he'll read some of them tonight, or at least one of them. Jeff Wright.
Yeah, I'd like to mention on the postcards that the next series will include Ted Berrigan, Jim Brody, Jane Ann Phillips, and a cartoon strip, which is it'd be fun. This poem was written about 1.5 years ago, and it's for Daniel Krakauer, who's one of the co-producers of the show. It's called Twins, in 2 parts. Part 1. One day nothing happened. It wasn't noticed, so the next week fell in the sea, making fading signs to St. Andreas. The officials hushed it up pretty good, but an ugly rumor registered at the Twin Winds Motel just south of the first ghost town. The horses in Kansas turned black overnight. Part 2. One day the sun got stuck in the blinds. Someone called a fireman. Hoses were elected to sit in high chairs. The guns couldn't defend themselves. One day nothing happened, came back with a star pinned on dispensing hurt milk. When one day nothing happened, met one day got stuck in the blinds. They killed each other with a kiss and fell in love and had twins who were separated at birth.
A short piece of prose that I've written recently, and which I've been working on a lot of prose recently. This is called Touring the Continent. When the highly polished limousine turned neatly for the second time, I saw 2 factories lurching together on the horizon. The morning shift had already arrived, and smoke rose from the tall chimneys like the hair of a drowning child. The city was announced by a pothole or two, followed by long winding avenues of calm trepidation. Around the S-shaped plaza, wicker chairs were carefully arranged so that nothing could pass unnoticed. Across the street from the hospital, under a gaudy sign advertising castor oil, stood the mailman, his forehead painted with stars. He was staring at 5 children who were kneeling before a shriveled pond and flogging their dungarees clean. To the left of them, a man tiptoed carefully, hoping to take his first bath of the day. At my hotel, the 2 uniformed doormen were defying the beggars to shuffle one barefoot step closer. Pigeons stood together on the surrounding roofs and nodded approvingly, while above them flags hung like wet handkerchiefs at a golden anniversary. My bags were quickly carried in by the bellboy. In the following weeks I learned that not far from the hotel and near the plaza were the arcades, where it seemed every imaginable item was for sale. On one street, a tall, toothless man sold blue postage stamps from an island that had vanished overnight. His half-brother displayed second-hand shirts from boisterous young senators, their threads still warm with the smell of tobacco and history. Further on, the stalls were elaborate pots dangled from hooks and gleamed like watches. In the mornings I wandered beneath these shabby awnings, and in the afternoon I sat in the park, watching the children and dogs fulfilling their ordinary rituals. Often I wondered why I made this trip, but now I think I am beginning to understand. Every morning I passed the 2 doormen, elegant in their red epaulets and green hats. They are always in the same spot, and though I feel myself becoming accustomed to their presence and see merit in the way they carry out their duties, I cannot go out without the feeling that something horrible is about to befall us.
That was nice. I'm going to read another, I'll read 2 short ones, okay? I'll read a real short one first. Pink Stinger. It was a strange time. She was a sweet thing. The 2 went together like tequila and perfume. I found them on page 47 of my bartender's guide. And this is my next to most recent poem. 8-8. Chance is the orgasm of systematic reprisal. Prediction is the answer to boredom. When the chicken crosses the road loses its original function, becoming instead a smooth object, an obstacle or obstruction to get over. The blade has 2 edges, but the coin has no point. Take the other hand, for example. You will discover 3 things: your name, your numbness, your number.
Well, speaking of bars, I'm going to read a poem about a bar, sort of. It's called Ramblings of a Baked Apple. It's, the neighborhood automat is speaking. Ramblings of a Baked Apple. Being a neighborhood automat has its advantages. Familial disruptions. He puts his makeup on with an ice pick and arguments over the numerous possibilities. A face appeared, the color of masking tape. They watch him methodically crumbling his crumb cake. Later, the hours come apart, and many forgotten itemizations pour through the seams of what we have never held, though often we have pretended to, for the sake of clarity between conversations in a darkening hall. Next.
Oh boy. Moving right along. I think I'll save my one last good poem here. Mercy. Okay, hand me my postcard. I'll read a couple postcards. Okay. Can you see this postcard? Postcard. It's got stamp on it. Yeah, there it is. That's it. It's got a little car on it. I'll read it now. Asleep at the wheel for Karen Ann Quinlan. No calm imposes over the scattered flapping of a migratory arrow made up of exiled birds. Nature's arbitrary breakthrough breaks down around Union Square. Cheap wine flirts with slit skirts opening on hotel rooms, like flags over buried TVs being substituted for windows. The American dream suffers from sleeping sickness, and no one else can turn off the machine.
Speaking of birds, we now have a poem in which birds are mentioned. This is called Goat Island. We are scratching the last corridor of the final chapter. Now, when trees appear on the crest of the mountains, the beardless captain screams out, "Thar she blows, laddies!" Indeed, it is a good sign, even if the snow remains thick and invisible, and the crows above us are bright orange because of the smoke from our portable stoves. They are still there, frozen in their flight patterns, like a paragraph invaded by corrections. This morning, Minnie told me both her dreams and her prayers are filled with exquisite gestures. I and the others joined her immediately. It is certainly more pleasant now that we are waiting for the results in an induced atmosphere.
Oh, I have another bird poem here. You got any more bird poems, right?
I'll find one.
Cry. Ed has a hole in his voice where he's worn out her name. Sound of what was a penny on a railroad track. Whisper of smoke off a just-fired Colt. In countries where the hearts go broke dousing the fire with alcohol, people live on trains. Trains run on yellow schedules. Each of the birds turn over like motors running on one name. Did you find your bird poem?
I did.
Oh, no.
This is called Forensic Foliage. After the statues were unveiled in honor of the man who believed in something simple and obvious, like birds flying backward, the children's auxiliary planted rows of flowers. It was necessary for them to bend forward, out of the blustery shadows, away from the frost that pulled its sheen down from the sky on their tender stems of terror. Some, however, still remain suspended in the air that surrounds the surface of our dreaming, like the night dispersing its stars, each part of a story in a web of stories.
Well, I've run out of subject matter here now. Now I'll read my poem about stars. Close rank. Venus. I see you walk by with a small jungle by your side in the cool evening air. Cars lose compression entering the vicinity. Cigarettes go out of their own accord, signaling ripped billboards to look alive. All eyes snap left. Heels click. Blue prints draw your face tight like tiny tracks filling with blown snow. The blueprints of extinct species. The jungle by your side leans uncomfortably on your weak arm and growls as the stars start to close in.
Yes, this poem's called Replevin, which I won't tell you what it means. You can look it up. No, Lafcadio Hearn. Replevin. The satin-lined pond retains intractable lumps and dubious afterthoughts, and the drone of the lawnmower winds its languor around the stubborn trees. The clouds drift apart, each quadrant veering into its pastel pasture, like the blue and white graduation gowns falling from the stadium for the first and last time. The great wooden doors have already opened onto the day, slipping down each banyan leaf. It is now apparent that our circle of acquaintances must widen to include mountains of mud. He enters alone and sits at a corner table in a suit the color of coffee. For it was as if the dust that filled our sunlit rooms was a copy of our conditions, and something else waits in the night, lined with invented portraits. I didn't even mention stars.
Pretty good. You've changed the whole order of things now. Oh, I can read anything now, right? Now my last good poem. I'll read a political poem here, Rhodesia. And I found this quote in Malcolm Lowry's book, Under the Volcano, that seemed so appropriate. The quote reads, it's a conversation he's having. Can't you see there's a sort of determinism about the fate of nations? They all seem to get what they deserve in the long run. So Rhodesia. There are some corners it pays not to retreat towards. The beautiful women are there in the shade of fruit trees. Lizards scale the cracked blue walls, escaping an intent sun. No tomorrow holds its pointed power over the courtyard. Out by the dusty road, a rusting Plymouth licks its wounds.
I have to read a political
Got a car
poem.
poem there? Political?
No, political poem. Let me see.
That's a hard one. That's the only one I've got.
Yeah, I have a political poem.
You got lots of doom poems.
Alright, here's a political poem. It's called Instant Coffee. In the woods behind the city, they saw a parachute snagged high up in the branches of a Douglas fir. The crate, with the word "Absolutely" stenciled in fading red letters on one side, dangling from its leather harness, was too high for either of them. The sun drained through the leaves, and one by one the birds disappeared into their diagonal anthems. They stepped back for a moment, and were as casual as beer cans. Chris thought that this discovery meant that hope was still a possible solution, a place marked off, where each of them could go and be alone. Jan, however, thought this was a clue to a puzzle that had not been constructed yet. They were looking for the story that most resembled their own. After many attempts, they left behind their notes, partially erased, like snow around a plane crash. Very political. That's as political as I can do.
Okay, I'll read another political poem. It's, want to fight about it? It's kind of for Ted Bergen, because some of the words are his, and some of the words are other people's too. Anselm Hollow. Want to fight about it? Let's hear it again for the tribe in the hall. I thought I could tattoo a mouth on the wall by the stairs and feed it my lonesome rooms till the war came home. All the poets gushing in the crushed weeds of wild generals, afraid to have their faces braked, lonely to leave the idea of light bulbs. I came here to forget. I came here to leave. I came here to sound out the whole of my days. Poet as nightmare, poet as a one-man war, woman in the dunes, curator of the Jack Daniels Cirrhosis Foundation, someone in a shower, someone who's been to Boulder, someone who can shut up in a tight spot. I came here to go home, grunt, grunt, a continual deserter, much like Rimbaud, just an old fool crazy about words.
Well, I have one about words.
That's cute.
Called The Traveler's Companion. The street on which he found himself was covered with an intricate series of descriptions by a prisoner whose dreams were as vivid as if the traveler himself had donned the supple raincoat. Herein lies tragedy for the gorilla, the voice went on. He grew too big for the heights without really readapting to the earth, and on that account is probably doomed. The clouds of inconsistency continued to lurk overhead. They had a power of evocation challenging that of any name in the jeweler's vocabulary. Indeed, they had played a part in this before.
Next, about words.
A diary
Yeah, read it.
poem. July 15th, 1977. Not recently, Pat. And now the trumpet solo scatters as static scratches through the green patina glowing faintly in this room. The frumpy afternoon empties its lumpy bag, and I remember Halloween. Did you choose something ordinary and bright? One boy on the block always dressed up as a donkey because his father was the only registered Republican around. Do I need to again? Do I need to tell you what it was that infused the day, like a Martian tune, like that wild-eyed boy.
Wild-eyed boy. Oh. Oh. Oh, man. Oh, I'll read the future. A little prophecy here. On getting home, he spent a long time closing the door. He kept trying to ignore the unnoticed radio, erasing his ears. After placing the peonies he'd splurged and bought in a gray and pink vase, he went to open the refrigerator, but it wasn't in its corner. All that was there was a lonesome square of long-standing dust. Ignoring this, he went to the window, lit a cigar. Down in the street, some half-naked kids played in a fire hydrant spray. They didn't see a puff of smoke holding the face on a cigar. It didn't see them. The streetlights came on. The room got dark.
Can I read something fairly long, but not real long? Alright, it's called The Discovery of Honey, and its title comes from a painting by Piero di Cosimo. Alright, The Discovery of Honey. The radio station changed its program from Mozart, Beethoven, and Gottschalk to popular hit songs sung by groups who had not been the first to record them. Between the piping trumpets and the placid contralto, he thought all these famous groups should be called the Footnotes, but he was too lazy to get up and change the station. He continued reading. The cottage was a fading, damp cube whose interior had been refurbished by her mother's boyfriend, a retired mechanic, in various shades of brown and green, slashes of blue, symmetrical smears of red, and repetitions of yellow and white. They were hushed reminders of summer, when the crackling winds drove powdery dunes across the lake. This hand mirror, placed between the mountains, which 2 months earlier had been bound and gagged by the snow that came each winter and left each spring as if it had never been there. By the time the polkas came on, the clouds had hardened like bacon grease. The bed was lumpy, and the sheets clung to it like a sack does to potatoes. The coffee mugs were clean and chipped, but the hairbrush collected samples of everyone's hair, while the toothpaste formed elfin green lumps. No one forgot about the breadcrumbs. 2. It was Sunday, and everyone was lined up for the matinee. Above the sweaty throng was the newest billboard. A flower, a pair of glasses, a rainy day, and a plastic shoehorn. These were the necessary ingredients. Every time they kissed and he pushed his tongue past her teeth like a mitten groping in the dark, she remembered how she used to roll cubes of Jell-O around in her mouth when she was young. Apple, strawberry, peach, orange, boysenberry, and banana. She was running out of flavors and would soon have to tell him everything. The collisions occurred all afternoon, and the after effects were rampant. A man smoothing his bald head, a whimpering child, an eager woman staring in disbelief. Oh, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Anyway, Part 3. Through the fading years, the town had fallen together on the side of the hill that faced away from the sunset. A few stores remained open, though the streets were nearly empty. The new police officer turned left as he had done 25 minutes earlier. This time the speckled hand did not rise above the yellowed curtains and wave. Not only were the designs ingenious, but each clock had a unique sound. He was more of a doctor to them. He knew the quirks residing in their bodies. However, today everything worked perfectly. The bishops, the zouaves, and the fish returned without any idea of what they were supposed to do, and did it. 2 lithe shadows peeked from the doorway of a store that sells all kinds of lamps. The moon was already part of the wallpaper. And this is the last part. Her next pair of glasses wouldn't be as stupid as these, that's for sure.
3 minutes? I think I can get through this in 3 minutes. This is my 3-minute poem. Okay. The family, a safe place. Beaten gold. Wait a minute. Here we go. Start again. A little girl's... Okay, I've got it now. Beaten gold smolders from a low-watt bulb bare in the middle of a little room. A little girl's one white dress and matching bag. The empty space her breasts await. The family. Mother, bone thing, and fingers bent, sews in the corner, her eyes going bad. Daddy chaws his backy, feet up, reads the news. Keep busy, keep your heads turned. The wolf so ugly sounds worse than north wind. Keep your ears plugged with 50-volt lines, piped direct from the official survival complex. Dinner. Oh, we got a letter from Aunt Helen. David broke his arm. Work today was really long. The smoke followed me like beauty. I didn't care to look. After so much bending over, so much stain ground in, fresh beauty isn't a threat no more. It's a bore. A sweepstakes joke like retirement. If you hide at just the right time, it passes by and you'll notice the sly tail of wolf lapping up its bright red dollar sign-shaped tracks. Poor beauty making the round, some blind night watchman in a boat all day. I bought this comfort, this chillless ring that haunts the cupboard full of heirloom glass. See this scar? That was the down payment. And this cough that rips up bits of my fog-bound lungs pays the monthly installments. I fuck my wife every now and then. We take little Daphne to a show or somewhere sometimes. Ask her. It's true, clean clothes I've washed thin, the grease that seeps through Daddy's skin and worn flecks in the checkered floor at Barney's corner store. I've left my share of blood, too, in the sink and on the stove. I've learned how to stack my flute-holed bones so they lean on each other like rifles in an enemy's camp. I know how to become so thin wolf walks through my legs and never smells me. My strained eyes look only for obstacles. I do all I can, I forget why. Oh, Daphne, honey, come over here. What you got there, little dolly Daddy gave you? Isn't that nice? You're playing house? How sweet. Tell Mama what you want to do when you grow up, Daphne, when your melons swell and bulge on the vine and your dew blossoms, when the night falls so hard it knocks the breath out of you flat against the earth on your back, sugar, when the wolf whispers you to get on and ride upstream in black water, white ice coming down. Mama's baby, let me sing you a song. Almost a 3-minute poem, right?
1 minute plus. Like a short one? 1 minute?
Got a short one?
Yeah. All right, this poem's for everybody I know. It's called Robert. All three of them. And this poem's for everybody I know. It's called Robert Herrick. I like wallpaper that makes sense. I own and operate a gas station that stands neatly clustered on a wedge formed by a fork in the road. The dust is a hindrance, but not a veil. Even on overcast days, I can see my face like the shell of a scooped-out cantaloupe rising in the windshields. And sometimes at night, I can see its ellipse floating toward me as if what it was going to say this time would make today a departure from all the rest. In the afternoon, the lake is as smooth as the polished black hood of Mr. Merriweather's vintage '38 Cadillac. It has that bottomless dark feeling about it that only cars and lakes and you can have. Thank you. Is that it?